Hey, so yeah, today's dangerous, guys. It's a dangerous conversation.
You already started?
Fuck yeah, it started. It's about
All right.
it's about atheism. This is about God, our path back and forth. Yeah, here we go. Today, man, we're talking about our path to atheism and from it. And mine's just quite an extensive story. But man, just go ahead and shoot, man. Tell me, are you an atheist?
No, I'm not an
Were you
atheist.
ever an atheist?
No, I was never an atheist. No, no.
Okay, so what are you?
So I don't like labels,
All
but if
right.
I had to label myself, I would say I'm an agnostic.
Okay.
Agnostic just means I'm not sure. I don't know for sure. I don't claim certainty if there is a God or there's not.
Now, even with that thought process, a lot of times, that's called like social suicide almost when, you're not adhering to the norm. Because I assume you were brought up Christian, right?
Absolutely.
Right. So, what did your parents think when you tell them, man, I just don't resonate with the stories and the things in which, I was brought up to believe?
So we haven't formally talked about that. That's not something we talk about a lot.
They're going to hear it here.
Yeah. So these are my personal beliefs from
Mhm.
my own studies and my own evolution and consciousness growth and just study and just curiosity, just pursuit of really trying to understand the world and myself
Mhm.
and what we're doing here as human beings on Earth. So these are just my personal beliefs. They don't have any bearing on what I believe.
And that's a disclaimer for our audience. This is our personal beliefs. There's nothing for us to be disrespectful towards anyone's beliefs or kind of telling you what you should or shouldn't do. This is just our path and how we came to where we are now.
I'm glad you said that because that's very important for me to get that out there first. That I'm empathetic towards everybody's beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think anybody's bad for their beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
That's whatever you want to believe is fine.
Mm-hmm.
I just take the topic of God and spirituality very serious and want people to know that, I got to speak my truth, whatever that may be. And whatever comes from that is just what comes from that.
So what was that tipping point? I mean, like, I feel like there's always a tipping point. Like for me, what actually started me to even go down this path was like I was brought up Christian
Mm-hmm.
and I was, it's that nagging fear of if you don't do what you're told, you're going to hell.
Right.
Like you're gonna get barbecued.
Right.
And I mean, like it was just always this. It was fear tactic to pull me in.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't like just the love and all that. It
Mm-hmm.
was like, hey, you need to do this. You're gonna burn in a pit of hell forever.
Mm-hmm.
And so being a compassionate person, because I believe most humans are. I was thinking about all the people who were not raised Christian. So I started saying like, damn, hey pops, like, what
Mm-hmm.
about these people over here that don't believe in this?
Mm-hmm.
Who well, every vessel will hear about Jesus and all this. I said, I get that, but I think it's an imbalance of someone who grew up in it versus somebody who hear it in passing or maybe get somebody to come minister to them. Like, trust me,
Absolutely.
there's a huge difference. That was the same argument. So as my questions became, more and try to go deeper, it was just like literally it couldn't go any deeper. And it was that compassion for all human beings. I was like, I don't think anybody should burn in hell. I mean, just think about what the hell can you do on this earth in your lifetime
That would warrant that.
to warrant that. I mean,
punishment.
like, yeah. I gave a good example I heard from a pastor when he gave the analogy of infinite time. He said, imagine it take 1 million years. Just imagine you looking at a beach of sand. Imagine it take 1 million years for a bird to fly there. And it grabs 1 grain of sand. And then it goes to an empty lot where there's no sand. It takes 1 million years to fly back. And it drops that 1 grain of sand.
Mm-hmm.
And it keeps doing that until one beach is empty and the other one is full.
Mm-hmm.
And then once the other one's full, it starts over.
Mm-hmm.
When he gave that analogy about time, like forever,
Mm-hmm.
I felt that shit.
Right.
And then I thought about what can a human do in their lifetime that will cause them to burn? Just imagine the most heinous shit you can do in your life. Let's say, and we talked about Hitler in the last episode. Let's just say all that evil shit he did, and at the last minute he confessed his sins and went on to heaven.
Right.
But let's say you have somebody who lived their life, was very compassionate, took care of people, literally exhibited all the aspects you would believe a Christian should have, but didn't fall in the doctrine.
Right.
But that person go and burn in hell forever.
Forever.
That was my turning point.
Gotcha. So my journey through this whole thing has been kind of up and down, kind of weird.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't claim to be arrived at anything.
Right.
I'm a very conscious person of evolution,
Mm-hmm.
and that this whole life thing is a journey, and especially intellectual, and trying to figure out the big questions of life. Who is God? What is God?
Mm-hmm.
What are we doing as humans? Where do we come from? Where are we going? All these hard questions that humans have been asking for since the beginning of time.
Right.
So, so far, my journey has been one. I started as a Christian. I was brought up Christian. And long story short, it got to the point where anything I study, I give it my all. Anything I go into, I give it my all.
Go hard.
Yeah, that's just my personality.
Like crackhead is
You know that about me.
Yeah,
There's no middle ground with me.
Mm-hmm.
Either I go all in or I'm out. There's
Mm-hmm.
not any kind of moderation with me.
Right.
So when I jumped into Christianity as a adult, jumped into it, like I said, I raised my whole life, but when I became serious about it,
Right.
which means, I made my conscious decision on my own
Right.
to go full force into it, was when I became an adult.
Right.
And I got to the point where I was thinking about becoming a pastor. I thought my genuine calling was become a pastor,
That's
a
where I thought
teacher.
the same shit. Go ahead.
You did too?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, become a pastor,
Mm-hmm.
a teacher, and have my own ministry.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to write my names of my ministries out and all that stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
I was contemplating going to Bible college, and I talked to my pastor about it at the time. And he encouraged me to do it because he saw my zeal for knowledge and the Bible. And I used to read the Bible like 6-7 hours a day sometimes, and really enjoy it,
Mm-hmm.
and break down the words and the biblical stories and all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So it's weird, but me studying that much and having an everlasting just a curiosity for knowledge, and led me away from Christianity instead of towards Christianity.
That's sad, ain't it?
Right.
I mean,
yeah.
because what's crazy is that a lot of people who, and although we're talking about Christianity, it's primarily because that's where we grew up and that's where our knowledge is primarily based.
Right.
But I believe it can apply to any religion.
Of course.
But I feel like that a lot of times it seems like when someone studies it so much and who's about to take it serious, and then they end up walking away from it, I kind of hate the notion when people feel like, let's say atheists or agnostic, and they feel like that it was an easy decision. Like this, I think it was the most hardest thing to do in my life, was to come to that realization that everything I've been taught may be wrong.
Right.
I mean, to come to that conclusion. And I mean, it's a fear because, mind you, it's something like you said, like, it's not that I arrived at anything. It's not like I'm at the conclusion, because trust me, I can
Right.
easily
I'm
switch.
not done. Right.
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
like, man, Jesus popping the podcast right now. It's on and popping.
Right.
I'm opening up churches. I'm preaching everywhere. Like,
right.
trust
right.
me. But it's I don't believe that'll happen. But the point is that to arrive at this decision is hard. And I feel like when I said earlier, social suicide, I have friends who don't believe, but they don't tell anybody.
Right.
They
They keep it inside.
They keep it inside and
To avoid that criticism.
avoid that
from the
criticism,
outside.
because it's always like, hey, why don't you believe in God? Why don't you do this? And they don't know, like, man, we've been studying, we've been reading. We even went outside the Bible to make sure we take everything into account. But most times you don't even want to listen to it.
Yeah. I mean, when I slowly arrived at that decision that this wasn't the right path for me, it was terrible. It was tormenting. I lost sleep over it. I
Mhm.
cried tears, like
Mhm.
genuine tears of remorse, and just and prayed a lot of times and sought counsel, with my
Mhm.
pastor and other pastors
Mhm.
and other teachers, and trying to get confirmation and just some kind of teaching on what I should do,
Mhm.
because I was having a crisis of faith, is what they call it,
Mhm.
and I've heard things about pretty much all major pastors and people who really pursue faith have what they call a crisis of faith, where
Mhm.
they have doubt and they don't know which way to go.
Mhm.
And they usually, get through that by continuing to go on and all that.
Mhm.
It didn't happen for me. I was led the other way to pursue a more liberal way of viewing religion and spirituality and God as my path, and that's what I'm on now, a more liberal pursuit. Like I said, I'm not atheist. I do believe there is. I don't like the term God, but for lack of a better word, I do believe there is a creator, a God, that we are here as part of that whole continuum.
And I mean, I hate the term too. I hate the label atheist. You know, there's like, if you don't believe in something else, there's not terms for that in other aspects. But when it comes to God, there has to be a term. But whatever, I'll take it. I just think to say you're an atheist, I think that's a side of the spectrum that's no different to say full-fledged 100% Christian, right?
Yeah.
Because I mean, you're saying without a shadow of a doubt that there is no God and everything is wrong.
If you're an atheist, yes.
Correct.
That's the definition of atheist.
Correct. Yeah. And I feel like that when I first went down that path, man, I was stone cold. Like I used to be on motherfuckers' comments, like they post some religious shit if you want to. Boy, I'm gonna be in your inbox. Hey, did you know this was made in this and this story would derive from this? And I realized I had to stop that shit.
You were. We talked about that a lot.
Yeah,
we used to have deep arguments about your way of pursuing atheism and then talking about it towards other people. Like, hey, calm down.
Dude, I was like a fucking bull in a china shop, man. Mm-hmm. I mean, like, I was in there wrecking shit. Mm-hmm. And comments, everything. And I read this book called Religion Explained. And I'll make sure to have it in the description for you guys. But it delved deep into the psychology of why there were religions created. With reading Religion Explained, it basically kind of went in on how and why we even develop religion and why it is important to our society to the degree in which it was created. Now, it doesn't stand the test of time as we do understand why things happen. And I think that's where the disconnect for me started to happen. Whereas, like, you know, I was told, remember the rainbow, right? That was God's promise to, you know, not flood the earth again. And every time I seen a rainbow, I thought this is why it occurred.
Right.
As I got older, you know, taking general science and physics class, I understood why a rainbow is created. When the sunlight passes through the water, it creates a prism of light.
Right.
And I was able to test that and see that in experiments in my actual classes. So it was kind of one of those things where it's just like, why isn't this lining up with the scripture? Mm-hmm. You know, why is it not? You know, so I guess just to delve this way, when you think about like people like, let's say T.D. Jakes, right? When I can listen to his sermon and I can receive the message, do you feel like these people like, I mean, because they have, I would say they have to study even more than we do, right?
For sure.
So do you think they like know the shit and just keep going with it? Is just getting paid at that point?
I think that's very hard to discuss. These are the inner thoughts of these great people.
Right.
But we can hypothesize that with them having so much intelligence and sincerely pursuing their faith and knowledge and trying to help people, that they probably have came across these issues and been asked these questions before, mm-hmm. or had their own private, like I said, crisis of faith as mm-hmm. well. So I think they have thought these issues through, and some of them probably came to a conclusion that they can't leave the faith. They've been in it their whole life, and they choose not to leave that faith. Their whole life is tied to that thing. This is my job. This is my career. This is my sustenance. Mm-hmm. This is what I do. Mm-hmm. You know. And I think some of them also probably came to a point where they turned away from the faith. We saw many pastors, many high-profile people turn away from the faith because mm-hmm. they couldn't do it anymore once they found new knowledge that contradicted what they already believed. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the most courageous way to be. And the hardest, yes, exactly.
A few of those pastors that I've seen do that actually went bankrupt, and
for sure.
It was just like a financial, you know,
suicide.
Suicide, jumping off the cliff almost, right. Just because they lose their friends, a lot of their family, you know, just like their way of life, living, and really, it's just, that's why I say it's not an easy path.
That's important. We should dive into that part about how religions can exclude you, and mm-hmm. they put you out. They'll completely disassociate with you if your beliefs are different from mm-hmm. where theirs are. Mm-hmm. And that's one of my biggest issues with religion in general, mm-hmm. As it stands. So, like I said, I believe in God. I don't have an issue with the concept of God in general, but mm-hmm. I do have a huge problem with the sovereignty of religion and how each religion thinks that they are the only way, and they are more important and sovereign than anything else. Yeah, we are the way. That's it. We are the one true way, and actually get confidence from it and enjoyment of saying we are the way, we are the truth. That's it.
And when they congregate, it's a way to build themselves up and reassure themselves of this fact, even though when there's contradictory things that contradict that. So I remember you and I had a conversation offline, right? And you said you hate the term atheist, and I said you could be atheist and agnostic.
Yeah.
I was saying that you were saying you couldn't be both, and I was using an example of how like and I may be different than what I'd stated in the past, but I feel like that with all the religions that came about and everything, and a lot of times you won't even listen to some of the stories when you hear like their creation myths or what they tell you to do, how you should wear a hat, how you should dress. I mean, it's just like, man, miss me with that bullshit.
Right.
So you easily become an atheist of it, as though like this shit don't even matter. But
you're talking about one believer and their belief about other religions.
Correct.
They are atheists towards those other religions.
Correct.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But they're atheists to that. But then they go so hard at what they believe in. But when the same things on why they shoot other ones down, they don't apply that same logic toward theirs.
Right.
So I wonder why that's the case. Is just that cognitive dissonance on why they won't even just attempt to even question what they believe?
Well, I think that faith is so deeply ingrained into our identity, our individual identity, that rejecting that is one of the hardest things you'll ever do. So telling somebody that, like you said in the beginning, everything you believe is wrong, or it has these holes in its armor, you might want to look deeper. That's too hard to deal with. That's intellectually difficult. It's very difficult. Even my journey, it was very difficult for me to see these holes in the Christian faith and what I thought I believed and what I thought was essentially perfect. It wasn't. It was like a veil lifted, over my eyes, and that's why I said I cried tears and I spent long nights praying, because I didn't want it to be that way. It's much easier to believe and just have faith and to move forward and not question, instead of questioning something and picking it apart and saying, oh, this doesn't make sense. This doesn't make sense. That doesn't line up with this, and
But I mean, there's a power to the psychology of religion, and
sure.
And like I think about like when you're in a congregation, you're at service, and the music is playing, and the sermon is right. I mean, it just feel like you all on one accord, like you could do anything. And I mean, I feel like it's almost like, imagine if we see a mother who's seen their child just got trapped under a car, and they somehow get fucking Hulk strength and lift that damn car up,
right,
and can grab their child, but they can't do it under any other circumstances. So when I think of stuff like that, situations, I mean, there is some degree to it that, and again, I think it's just more power to the human mind, because and that's where it kind of keeps me into it, as far as like understanding, believing, and the fear. I don't want to jump away from the fear, because I feel like that's why they really push it to you when you're little. They constantly reinforce it to you when you're little. Like, hey, you're gonna barbecue, man. Lake of hell, lake of fire. Right. Yeah, that shit's coming, man.
Right.
You don't believe. You even say you don't believe. Here's a scripture right here that's gonna tell you what's gonna happen to you. And I mean, I struggle with it. I mean, I do. I feel like that. I lost my mother last year, and she was not a religious woman at all. I mean, she believed, but not to the degree that I think she would be up in heaven singing songs all day.
Right.
But she didn't do anything that she needs to burn for all of eternity.
Right.
And that's where I struggle with it, because I feel like that if heaven is supposed to be this place of love, right? And no sadness or anything like that, what person can feel good if they knew someone they loved or cared about was in hell? While you up in heaven, like, yeah, well, I made it. I made it.
Yeah.
Be like, wait a minute, where are my kids?
Uh-huh.
Fuck, they didn't make it.
Right.
I told them motherfuckers what to do.
Right.
I gave them the word.
Yeah.
Well, they didn't do it. But hey, you should be happy. You're here. How can I be happy? You know what I mean? Like, I can't be happy. And that's where I struggled with religion, and that's where I struggle with it today. Where I do find peace at, where I love the communion in it. So sometimes just to connect with certain people, I will play along. You know, like, and not in a disrespectful manner, but I will play along to be respectful because I understand the power they get from it. That's a psychological thing. So if you could use this religion, let's say, to get to the goals and the area in life that you want to get to, I guess with that respect, I'm all for it. What I do hate is when you start to tell me, hey man, you need to do this because you know your life is at stake, your soul is at stake. Do you ever get that because you don't share it?
So you said a lot there. One is the power of community.
Mm-hmm.
So any ideology, any belief system, any philosophy, you want to have power of community to reinforce that mental mindset of whatever that is. So as far as religion goes, or even with gaming or whatever it is, you want a group around you that supports your beliefs, not detracts from your beliefs. And you have to, that's the same thing with church. You got Christians and you congregate, you reinforce the beliefs, you get the word, you read the Bible together, you pray, you get that the communal spirit of what you're doing, you go eat, and then you go your separate ways. But when you have somebody, that's why they teach you to stay away from people who detract from that. So people who ask questions.
That's the purpose.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So people who ask questions, people, I didn't like what he said today. What do you think about this? Well, maybe that's not in the Bible, blah, blah, blah. These are the people they teach you to stay away from because they're detractors and they can put ideas in your head about disbelief and doubt. And that's what they want you to stay away from is doubt and questioning and all this stuff. Just have faith. Just believe. No matter what you think, supersede that with your faith.
What was the first seed you ever got in your mind that you think planted? That, like for me, just when you said that, the other day I met this film adjunct that I was with in high school. Real great guy. Even started me on my path, even liking the art of filmmaking and things and such. I actually tried to preach to this guy when I was 18. I did. I was just like, man, you know, Jesus is the way and all this.
I can't see you doing that at all.
I did. I did. I came to this guy and I said that, and he was just like, I don't know, man. What if Jesus is not real? That's all he said. He didn't say anything else. He kept it kosher enough to where he wouldn't get in trouble with his job. But he planted that little seed, like, what if Jesus is not real? And I was like, what the fuck he saying? Because it was different from anybody I've ever been around. So when he said that, it was just like, man, get the fuck out of here, bro. He just created sacrilegious, man.
Right.
He just said Jesus may not be real.
And that's what happens. The seed of doubt comes, and then Christians call that, Satan, basically. Yeah. And then that seed grows and grows and grows until you're out of the faith. Yeah. And that's the exact opposite of what they want you to do. So,
and I mean, what was yours though? Was it somebody? Was it a book? Was it a passage?
I can't pinpoint it, but I think it was me reading the Bible for myself. And I think that's what a lot of religious people in general don't do. They adopt the label of whatever belief system they say they have, but don't dig it deep into the theology of whatever the belief system that they say they hold. So how many Christians actually read the Bible from cover to cover? Not just, Psalms or, John or something, John 3:16, read the actual Bible and see, does it make sense? Does it line up? Pursue the historical evidence for Jesus and for where the Bible started and so how it came together.
Reading it, because most times I feel like with reading it, it helped like almost reinforce it, but with yours, it was starting to open up your eyes that stuff wasn't lining up for you.
Yeah, reading it and comparing it to what I was hearing in church and what people were teaching me about different theological practices.
I get what you're saying.
Yeah,
because I feel like a lot of times I used to hear sermons and things, and I was like, yo, that ain't even in the damn Bible.
Right.
It's like, man, where are you getting this from?
Right.
Like, how are you, so do you think...
I'll add one thing there. You'll laugh at this. When I was heavy into church, right, I always had this kind of a joke in back of my head that I was getting to the point where I was about to start teaching in my church.
Okay.
And I wasn't going to do it right away, but it was something in the back of my head. I was going to do a sermon and make sure purposely teach a sermon, and none of what I said was going to be in the Bible purposely.
Okay.
But it was going to be so enthusiastic,
right,
so joyous, and so full of happiness and hype people up. And then at the end, I was going to tell them, none of what I said was in the Bible, but everybody was going along with it. Why is that? Why do we not know more about the word that we say we live by?
Mm-hmm.
Read the Bible for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Don't take a charismatic leader's word for what your theology should be.
And I think the danger too is like when you look at, like, let's say with not sticking to the word or whatever, right?
Yeah.
A lot of times in things in which they push is really like a lot of self-help stuff. So it is relatable information. I just feel like when they add that God aspect as your soul is at stake, and then give 10%, what they call it, faith-based
tithes and offerings.
Yeah, but it's prosperity teaching now.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of financial literacy amongst people, and instead of focus on that, you talk about giving 10% of your income into the congregation,
right?
And not because, just to be honest and say, hey, we need money to pay bills.
Right.
The people here is doing this full time.
This is how we stay alive.
This is how we stay alive.
Yeah.
I can respect that.
Mm-hmm.
But when you say that your blessings are tied to you giving me money
and how much you give,
I mean, like I was watching the other day where they showed this video where this guy was like, hey, send in $1,000. Send in $1,000. I'll send you some holy
some holy water.
Yeah, some holy. I'll swear on everything, bro. Like I'll send you some holy water, or I'll send you. I'll put you on this prayer list. I mean, and what's sad is that the psychology of the human mind is that you can get so bought into it. Like they was doing like these healings or whatever, and parents were bringing their kids, and people were coming all over, and guess what? They weren't getting healed, but they were still donating thousands of dollars, and they was like, they were just so. I think you wrote it down in those prior to the show, but the intolerance to it. Yeah. Like they was just blind to it. Like they didn't see that what they thought should happen per scripture didn't happen. Right. And somebody cynical like me is like, well, hey, based off scripture, if two or more are gathered in my name, whatever they should agree upon should be given to them. Right. So that means that if you and me believe and have the faith of the size of a mustard seed, if we pray for healing for this person, they should be healed. Right. And Jesus done it.
And some of that is actually, because you'll see some people get healed, and there are spiritual things.
Isn't that placebo?
That's what I was going to say.
Okay.
Some of that is the power of the mind.
Right.
We know by science the placebo effect is real. You can give somebody a sugar pill and tell them that this is going to heal your headache, and the headache will go away. Well, what healed the headache? It wasn't the pill, but they thought it was the pill. So it really was the power of the mind that healed them, not the pill itself. That's the placebo. So some of that is the placebo. You feel better after you leave a church service. Somebody will pray for you, and your belief in the prayer is what healed you, not the prayer itself. So what really is the mechanism that's doing the work here?
Well, I mean, like, I guess for me, like in this, again, just talking about our past, I mean, these are things that were for someone who's cynical, for someone who asks questions, for someone who is trying to get more in depth, for someone who is like, because some people may just go along and buy it. Like, hey, you say I got to give this money?
Well, that's what most people do.
Yeah, my blessing is tied to this. Guess what? I'm not lending enough. And let's say for you, it's very financial literate. You're like, okay, 10% of my income over the course of time, if I would have put in an XYZ, this ain't adding up for me.
Right.
It's not. Why is God tying my blessing to what I give to the church? Why is a pastor riding around in Maseratis, private jets, and and pushing this, and again, I mean, there's so many dichotomies on some even within the religious sect say that's charlatan work or whatever. But the thing is that they hide behind the veil of Christianity, behind God, and I feel like if God is real, right, and you're seeing that so many people are being led astray. Again, this is from my perspective. So many people are being led astray. Why not fix it, right? I mean, for example, you have two children. If you see one is just not getting it, and it's just doing the total opposite, and all you have to do is just with a clear, audible voice, son, that is not what the fuck I meant when I said this.
Right.
This is what I meant.
And just like that is fixed.
Just like that is fixed. So when you have so many different religious sects within one religion, it's like, man, you're supposed to be a Baptist, Pentecostal, this, that.
What do you do?
I mean, it's just like, it's just so many.
What's the right way?
Exactly. And that's, like I said, and that's where it keeps me away from it. And I like the term agnostic, and only because I don't think it's as harsh as the term atheist. And I can't for sure say there isn't a God, because deep down inside, I want it to be one, to be honest. Now, do I want it to be like to care what two people do naked in their bed, or like, no, I don't. I just feel like it's just like you know, with your children, right? You gave them life. You and your girl, you know, the women you had children with, you made them. You gave them life. You don't control it. Hopefully they make the good decisions. You give them the tools they need. I feel like in some way, shape, or form, that's a God complex.
What do you mean, taking care of your kids?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or like just you gave them life.
Right.
Like, I mean, you had them.
So now let them evolve on their path as they will,
exactly,
and try to guide them as they go.
Exactly.
I got you.
Yeah, and not just like the, you know, oh, you got to do this, or you know, you're going to burn.
Or punishment is everlasting hell,
exactly,
hellfire, and all that stuff. Yeah. So a big point there is just faith in general. I think we have to be more liberal in our belief system. So, and that's on both sides. Mm-hmm. Atheism needs to be more liberal in their way of talking to people and believing, and also faith believers. Mm-hmm. So you got faith is just a belief system. It's belief in, it's just confidence in an idea or concept. That's all faith is. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean you have evidence for what you believe in. So it doesn't mean it's actually true. Mm-hmm. So I can have confidence in being a Buddhist today, and then 5 years from now, I can have major confidence. I can criticize Buddhism and then be a Christian and have faith in being a Christian. Mm-hmm. My confidence just changed from one concept to another one, but it doesn't make either one of them true. And I can also be an atheist as well and have confidence, because you have to have faith to be an atheist, a level of faith to be an atheist as well.
I mean, yeah, the degree of certainty to say that for sure.
There is no God. Yeah. But most atheists will look you in your eye and tell you you're dumb for believing in God. Mm-hmm. So that's their faith. Mm-hmm. You're stupid. Mm-hmm. You know, there is no God. If you don't have proof for that, that's just your level of belief and understanding at that time. So I think we have to just be careful of belief, and let other people evolve on their journey, and not condemn people for believing different than you. You know, we're all fallible. It's okay.
I guess the only issue I will point out is when it comes to children, right? I mean, I feel like that when you teach them at a young age, where they're so impressionable,
right?
Where you teach them as though this is the only way. Like with my kids, like a few of my kids, they fall into religion. That's fine, but I never pushed it on them. I never forced it or made them feel like you have to do this or you're going to burn.
Right.
Ask questions.
That's the key.
Yeah, ask questions. You know, come in with a layer of skepticism, and you know, from time to time we'll have the conversation. You know, if you find peace in that, that's perfectly fine. But I feel like when I see some situations where children are just like force fed this from child, that when they get older, it's hard for them to break away. Like you said, like they're so taught to not even listen to anything else, that when someone gives a different, you know, idea, that almost it can lead to violence. It can lead to like, I don't want to work with you. I don't want to do business with you. Right. Like, you know,
complete dissociation.
Completely. I mean, I've been online sometimes where I just posted a meme. It was something around Easter, and it was just talking about how it's the spring solstice. You know, like the a lot of true origins of the holidays which we celebrate.
Right.
And somebody blocked the shit out of me.
Right.
Like somebody that I knew I talked to often. And it was just like, you were so conditioned, like you said, to just deter yourself from anybody who would even remotely say anything that's against it. And I think that's where the problem is. It's like they're not even taught how to think anymore.
I agree with that. And that bothers me so much about religion. I've seen so much pain, and you know, sat across the table from pains in my intimate, my close friends' eyes, to where their mother or their brother or their best friend for years completely won't talk to them anymore because their beliefs are different. That's the dumbest thing in the world to me. That's not love, which is what every religion teaches anyway. That's the opposite of what your religion teaches. But the religion also have the thing in there where they always say, the unbeliever is wrong, the unbeliever is evil, stay away from them. So that's in there too. So which one is it? Which one is it?
Yeah, I mean, it's
love me, but if I believe different than you, never talk to me again.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean,
Come on, like,
it's clear.
come on.
I won't say it's not clear. I feel like that how we define love is different. You know what I mean? As we evolve as a human species, we realize that that's not the true love
That's not love at all.
It's not exactly, but I'm saying according to them, that's love. Love who thinks just like you. Love who follows the things.
But that's so conditional.
It is conditional.
You know?
It's very conditional, and that's what I said. It's a dangerous condition.
If you birth your child and you brought your child to have a certain ideology, cool, and then they become of age where they can think on their own and they go the opposite way, and you completely cut them off. How can you look your child in the eye and tell them, son, we can't talk anymore. Daughter, I can't have association with you anymore because you believe different than me. You're going a different way. You're leaving the truth.
Well, I mean, a lot of times it's that fear. And like I said, even to this day, I mean, that natural fear that's been conditioned, at least within the Christian community, that you're going to burn in hell. I mean, that's nothing easy to walk away from. That's nothing.
I totally agree.
Yeah, I mean, just to be told for so long, like, man, it don't take much to go to hell. You know what I mean? And even it's a beauty in it, meaning like it's a good way to control the mind and get people to fall in line. But it's also a scary thing because it's like you don't even need proof beyond what's written down.
Right. Ain't
like you got some charred place you can go see. Like my brother has sent me this thing, and I I'm gonna say my brother sent me this video. He sent me this video, and it was like Russia created this hole to hell, or like dug this hole to hell, right? And the video started off, you just hear people crying, like screaming and shit. And I was like, damn, was this supposed to be proof? Like, I was just like, well, why don't they get the camera and go down there? You know, like if you can hear it, you can get a camera down there. And, you know, and the video, of course, didn't show anything like that. It just said it played the sounds from whatever. And it's like the shit like that. It's like when somebody's cynical is just asking for proof. It's like, what's wrong with that? Like for me, like, remember I told you in the beginning that I would switch. God knows in my heart what I would need. He knows what I would need to believe in Christianity. Now, like I said, I remember you shared the book with me, Conversations with God. I listen to that often. And I was trying to get my wife to listen to it from time to time because it resonates with me. And, you know, and I will put that in the description for you guys to, you know, listen to. I'll even link it at the end. But I feel like that, because they have the audiobook online. But I feel like it resonated so much because it really showed that we are guys. Like when it talked about creating the utopia, solving world hunger, all these things, like God gave us the power to do that. And we literally do have the power. I mean, it was like the most straightforward message that I think if it was in the actual Bible, I think I will follow it even more.
Right.
You know, because I've always had that question. Like you hear the people who be like, oh man, thank God. I just got this check in the mail. I've been waiting on it. God just sent me some money. He paid this bill. That's so great. And I'll be like, that's cool. But I mean, he got more pressing issues. It's like
world hunger.
World
like
hunger.
Thousands of people dying every day.
Every day. Yeah. You know? World hunger. Like there's somebody right now getting, excuse me, getting the R word to him. You get what I'm saying? There's somebody right now getting the R word to him. Like, stop. Hey, forget about my money right now. Go handle that.
Right.
I could take the back seat. I could take the back seat. And that's where, you know, when I would talk to people of the faith and they will, you know, claim these miracles or claim these things, it's just, that's where I would find the problem with. Because I will point it out to them online. Like, even when they would post shit like that, I was the motherfucker in the comments like, hey, you know, maybe next week he'll get the world hunger.
Right.
I'm glad he sent that check in the mail to you. Block, motherfucker.
Right. It's almost like if it's a hierarchy of way that God has to answer prayers. Like a primary or the priority is gas in your car. Yeah. The priority is your kids and your whatever. But whatever 20,000 people die every day of world hunger, or in your city, not just even globally, just in your city, they pray every day, you know, but they're still dying and dropping like flies. But, you know, as long as I get gas in my car, as long as I don't get fired from work, our preservation is good, then we're good to go. These type of things, theologically, they just don't make sense to me as a person for an intelligent God to do that. So.
I mean, and that's where I like that book, The Conversations with God. Now, of course, like I told you, I had problems with that book too, because as I would love to get a pen down and write, and for God to just have a dialogue with me, I probably wouldn't leave the house for years. We could talk
Right.
Forever. You know what I mean? Because it's just like a million questions I would want to ask. And I feel like that, God has, if he has the power to, let's say, create the universe, create everything in it, create all of us, create everything and how we see it, the beauty in it, and just our mindsets. He has the ability to talk to us, and not some way that can be interpreted any other way than clear. Like when people say, well, that's God talking to you when the wind blows that way. Just like, dude, fuck out of here, bro. Maybe the wind is blowing that way because it was forecast to blow that way.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Or some coincidence that we now attribute to some belief, But if God came with an audible voice in every single language, so everyone can hear it. This is who I am. This is my task of you. This is what I am building. This is how I'm going to test you. This is what I require of you. But you can't escape that.
Right.
Even like I said, all the different, pastors and how they interpret stuff. Hey, you're right, you're wrong. This is clear, because it's clearly confusion. And I think that in its own is enough for people to say, let me get us a pause. Let me walk away right quick. But it don't happen. And that's where the evolving path for me is that I constantly evaluate that, because I know what I want to see. And like I said, as people you love and people pass away, it's a fear that grips you, because you used to long at one time to say, oh, I will see that person again.
Right.
I will hold that person. We get to go and
it provides that comfort.
That provides that comfort. Yeah. And then the religion does explain how religion does offer comfort. Right. And I like it in that aspect, but maybe if we were more honest about that, we do not know what happens after death, because they asked Mark Twain, they asked him, hey, do you fear death? He said, for I do not fear death, for I've been dead for billions and billions and billions of years before my existence. If we think about before you were born, you don't remember anything.
Right.
It just came boom into existence. And I personally believe it would be like that after you pass. So it makes me more conscious and aware of how I live my life, more appreciative, more, hey, when I'm driving, I'm going to be careful. I'm not going to drink.
Because once you're gone, you're gone.
Once I'm gone, I'm gone. Yeah. And, it's a void that separates you. Like, when you lose someone, I feel like the non-believer feels it even more, because there's a void of time and
because
space.
They don't have that comfort?
Exactly. Well, because they know there's no way I'll ever see you again.
That's that comfort I'm speaking of. Yeah, that you get from having a religious belief.
Exactly.
That kind of dampens that hardship that you're dealing with. I got you. That's actually a good point. One thing I'll say is, you mentioned about faith. And how we just need to realize that we just don't know. Like I said, faith is just confidence in the concept or idea that you have. It doesn't mean it's actually true. Well, if you know something without a shadow of a doubt, you don't need faith. Faith is irrelevant at that point. Right. I know this is what it is. I know that I'm a male human being. I'm not a female. I know I'm a male. I don't have faith that I'm a male. I know that. So, and the same thing with religion, you actually don't know, and you can never actually know these answers. These are big questions beyond our way of thinking. We can't know for sure.
But those who are deep in it, man, and it's sad, but they would disagree with that.
Right, and that's my point. They're going to a point where I know for sure you should say this is the way for me.
Right.
Not that this is the only way. This is the way things should be. Because a lot of belief and faith comes wherever you're born geographically. If you're born in the U.S., you may be a Christian, because we're quote-unquote Christian nation. If you're born in India, you'll probably be a Muslim or a Buddhist, because that's what they believe there. It's probabilities where you're geographically born. So, you got to think about that logically. I just needed my parents need to have sex somewhere else in the world, and I would believe something totally different. And I will feel certainty and faith about it just as much as I do Christianity there.
I call it geographically fucked if you were born somewhere that was a Christian. And that's where I told my dad, of course we had this conversation when I was older. I was very respectful, but, I was just like, man, some people are geographically fucked pops. Man, there's a guy just like me on the other side of the world who probably has, we probably share everything in common. Like the same video games, hell, he's probably even a twin. His woman probably looked like mine. Kids probably look just like mine. The only difference is he was brought up Muslim and I was brought up Christian. So one of us is right and one of us is wrong according to the according to
but it's all based on
biblical
geographical
or the Quran. It is based off geographic, and I feel like that's where it's sad that someone's soul, I should say, or their eternal damnation is based off where you're born. Something that's out of your control. And I feel like a loving God, like, to me, like, and that's why I kept saying, like, I don't know what a human being can do in 80 to 90 years, and I mean that's a long lifespan, but I don't know what someone can do in this lifetime. I mean, hell, even if you did the most heinous crimes, you may get life in prison, you know what I mean, like the death penalty. But like for eternity, I mean, damn, I mean, they could transform into the most awesome person in the next lifetime, you know. So to have that much hatred towards something that you created because they were confused because you didn't leave the proper messages, or what you left is not being interpreted correctly, who was to blame?
That's a really good point. And that's one of my other really big problems with Christianity as a whole. If you read the Bible, when you look at the way God is portrayed, it's such a human God.
Oh, very human.
Oh, it just
emotional.
Pettiness, emotional, just mean-spirited, non-forgiving, unloving, you know, unprotected, all these different things that humans do. This can't be the God of the universe that made billions of planets and billions of galaxies and has all knowledge and knows everything, past, present, future. This cannot be that God. That's why I say, you know, the concept of God in these religions, I can identify with, but I do think there's something beyond us, and I just believe that. But you know, obviously I can't prove it, but I do believe that. But the Christian God, I have a lot of issues with the Christian God as a concept to believe in that personal God.
I mean, he gets homicidal in the Bible. I mean, like
murderer,
straight genocide. I mean, like
wipe out your whole generation if you don't believe in me.
You know, like,
I am the God. Believe in me.
I think it was it Noah in the Bible where I guess the devil and him had a little pact or whatever, where like the devil said he can get him to, you know,
that's
recant. Job, yes. That he could get him to recant against God or whatever, and then
they made a deal.
Yeah, and then he like
go ahead, try it.
Yeah, try it. And he took all his kids, and then in the Bible it was like, oh, well, he got more kids. I'm sorry, I have 7 kids, but my oldest kid is not my youngest kid. They're 2 different people. So if I lost one, I'm not gonna mitigate that. Be
okay because I got more.
Yeah, like it doesn't happen that way. You know what I'm saying? Right. And it was just like, our human minds today, we could look at the fallacy in that. It's just like, man, that's complete, utter bullshit, man. Like I mean, for the pain of anyone losing a child, I mean, it's just beyond imaginable. And I've known people personally who lost a child and who end up having more children in the future. It doesn't replace the child that you lost. Right. So for that to be the
reward,
the reward, as though like all is good, I'm happy, I got kids again. It's just like, you know, damn, man, like why did they have to go? Like just because to prove something, there was no other way to do it. I mean, and again, there are emphases in the Bible which I believe is good to live by. I believe it's good.
Oh, it's a lot of proverbs.
Yeah, a lot
of wisdom in Proverbs.
And that's where, like, you know, a lot of believers point to, and it's just like, man, I don't disagree with that. I can quote scripture every day, all day. You know, I can go to things in which I will live my life by. And my wife every day listens to scriptures, and I mean, she's a definite believer, but she will listen to like morning inspirations. And I mean, she listened to Joel Osteen, and she knows how I feel about him.
Right.
Like, I mean, I constantly every day just, you know, the mega churches I can't stand. But the point being is that even with the message that he provides, it's still a good self-help. It's good ways to practice. And again, almost every self-help book reiterates that same type of thinking, just with God and without God, or however to get there.
Exactly.
So I won't disagree with that. But I just feel like that when you start peeling back the layers of the Bible and with their stories and how things happen, and you know, God was very, very involved back in the day. Was
absolutely. You're talking about Old Testament, right?
Yeah. I mean, hell, even the New. I mean, he had Jesus. You know what I mean? But definitely in the Old Testament, man, he came down in a heartbeat. There was no confusion about his presence. You know, unless it was just a willful disregard for knowledge, which there were those few. But for the most part, the general consensus that his presence was known. It was understood. And those who were in different, let's say, tribes or whatever, they felt the might, like the Egyptians did when they held the Israelites. You know, they learned real quick this God is not to be played with. I don't understand why we can't get that today. And I'm not asking, you don't have to, smite anybody or kill anything. Just have a conversation. Give me the clarity, and not from somebody's mouth or somebody's interpretation, or go read this book, or and again, not saying all of those are bad, but I'm saying for the God of the universe who can create everything, I'm not asking for much. That's easy. If you and your child were having a misunderstanding, as I stated, he or she don't have to beg you to talk to them, because you can clear things up. You can give them that knowledge and wisdom that clearly they're misunderstanding.
I actually have a perfect statement I wrote last night about that. It's almost like a question.
Mm-hmm.
So I wrote last night, one of the primary qualities that religions espouse to God is that he is all-knowing. If that's true, why do religions that represent him persuade primarily by fear instead of logic? If God is all-knowing, he knows everything past, present, and future, why are we persuaded to believe in him by fear instead of logic? That just like you were saying, fear is the way of convincing and persuading. Salesmen use that all the time to get me to buy iPad. You're going to miss out. Yeah. So you fear missing out. So you buy an iPad. The God of the universe could use logic and convince me more based on my intellect instead of fear. It's like you said, it's been saying this whole time, it's all about hell. It's all about punishment, eternal damnation to get me to believe, versus actually giving me certainty based on intellectual evidence. This is God. Well, show me. I want to believe. I know a lot of atheists who actually want to believe, they just can't because it makes no sense.
That's right. So, that's where I'm at. Just a little bit further agnostic. Like you said, we want to believe. We want it. We're not asking for much. Bring up these clarifications. Settle the differences in what we find within the realms of science.
Exactly.
What we can see. I mean, I feel like with religion, they come to the conclusion, and then they try to find things to fit it. Whereas, with science, we see the evidence, and we're trying to draw from the evidence to a conclusion. It's one of those things where when you start asking those questions, when you're a believer and you're cynical and you're like, hey, this don't make sense. Hey, this, that. And when you're told to, don't do that.
Be quiet.
No, or
just believe in God. Don't question.
Or God's going to reveal it to you. Like, why can't you just reveal it right now? Like, I promise you, I will get the lesson if you just tell me right now.
Yeah, one thing I like about science is that it's an evolving way of questioning and getting answers. It's not just stagnant. Science always. What scientists say is what's true now about science won't be true about science in the future.
Sure.
That's because it's always evolving and questioning and testing itself against itself to get new answers. Religion is not that way. Religion is set in stone. This is what we believe. This is how it's going to stay. This is what you must say, what you must believe, how you must act forever. There is no change. There is no clause in the Bible that says we can revise this in 3,000 years to accommodate homosexuality. People have different lifestyles, and people who are different than what's said here. This is it. This is all we have.
Yeah, and we had to, I say, with regards to religion, we had to come to that conclusion on our own. We had to step outside the Bible to be able to, like you said, make accommodations for things like such as homosexuality. Like, why would the creator of the universe, out of all the immense things you do, you care about what two people do naked in their bedroom? I can't fathom that bothers you that much. Or, with regards to just all the things, the new family dynamic. Now, families are changing. We talk about the hierarchy and stuff like that. And again, there are things within the Bible that I believe do fit well within my family. But some families, it don't fit. And like you said, it'd be nice if it could be a ever evolving,
some kind of revision,
just revision, and just something to be
at least every 1,000 years. Come on, man.
Yeah, I say more than that.
I'm joking. I mean, that was a joke, but it's like, come on, there is no revision. This is the word of God. That's it. There's no changing from that. And it says, you can't take things out, you can't add things. So, that's it. What you got here is what I have for you to believe forever.
And with the beauty of science, to touch back on that, even when there are changes being made, it's celebrated. It's not like, man, I've been sitting on this whole time, I'm so mad. You're like thankful that, wow, you've opened my eyes to something that I was wrong from, let's say, maybe 30 years of my life believing in this theory, to come to find out that it's all trash. But I'm not upset. I'm glad that you were enlightened enough to find out what the truth was. And that's the beauty in that. Like if you find something that contradicts religion, I mean, you're shunned. I mean, you're literally like, and it's a dangerous slippery slope. I mean, I've heard some far extreme Christians say they don't believe in dinosaurs. They believe the earth is flat. I mean, I'm serious.
That the Bible teaches that the earth was made 6,000 years ago. Right. And we know it's been here billions of years.
I think we're like 4 some billion years old.
Yeah, humans are 200,000 years old. So obviously it wasn't 6,000 years old. It's so much to say about science and religion and how they contradict each other. They fight each other.
I wouldn't say that. I would say that science continues to reveal it, but science is more subdued. Reason because of funding. We have so many zealots of religion in like places, politics, voters. The last thing you want to do is anger them and tell them like, "Yo, you're fucking wrong about all this shit. Now we need funding to go to space." Oh, you know what? I heard what the fuck you just said. Nope, we're not going to vote for that. So, and a lot of times they have to be tamed. Just like in the schools where they want to push certain things to be taught. And,
evolution or not evolution.
Correct. Like
biblical creation versus evolution.
Yeah, when they want to teach creation in school, and of course scientists will, find a problem with that. But for the most times they take a back seat because they will lose things like funding. They will lose things like projects and things they want to do because, again, if you got majority of the voter base who is, religious in some way, shape, or form, they have the power.
Which is why there would never be an atheist president.
Exactly. At least not right now.
1,000 years. It'd be a long time before you see that.
It'd be a very long time. I mean, I feel like, and this is just touch back with the problem I have with atheism. And I did this because I was very like, when you come with this knowledge, you just like literally, different than
a religious fanatic. It's the same thing. And that's what you were. You were an atheistic fanatic.
Yeah, I was like, yo.
Versus a religious fanatic.
Hey, read this book. Read this passage. Do this. Do that. And, and at a point I realized that I'm combating years and years of indoctrination. And it took time for me to get there. And, and it was the most subtle thing that got me to change. It wasn't nobody beating it in my face. It was that one statement, that one question.
That one seed of doubt.
Like, you really think Jesus is real? Like, you think that is? Oh, all right. That's all it took, And then, as I hung out with other people, and it's like a scary thing. It's like, where like I hung out with some Christian friends, right? Or at least I believed him to be Christian. We was working out, we was talking, we had a great conversation. And he just came out and said it like, man, bro, I really don't think Jesus is real. I was like, what? Did you fucking say that? Like, man, I feel the same fucking way. It was like, what? We was trying to get our spouses to go to church together and shit. It was just like oh, I'm glad you fucking feel that way.
Right.
Because, I didn't want to say that shit and be like...
You don't want to offend each other.
Yeah, be like, man, I don't hang out with this motherfucker. Go back to his wife, man.
Now, since he brought it up, he opened the door.
To
have that relationship
go
deeper.
And then he knew a few other people, and it started opening. It made me feel more comfortable.
The power of community.
Yeah, it made me feel more comfortable with, just being in a realm. But like I said, the problem I had was just, you can't really be so super zealous like that because you can't. It's no different than what I see religious fanatics do.
Same thing. And that's what I was trying to tell you years ago when you were so fanatic on that side. Like, dude, calm down. You don't know everything. Just because that's your belief, it doesn't mean it's true. And I think that's probably where we differ a little bit, and probably something we should touch on is that I think atheists can have that, or non-believers, whatever, can have that same arrogance to them. You know, they put people down and call people stupid who don't believe like them, or who refuse to be persuaded from their faith to their way of thinking. We all are here on this journey. None of us know everything. I think there is no evidence for God, and there will never be any concrete evidence for belief or disbelief in God. So we should settle that and say, we don't know, but this is my choice. And I'm not going to put anyone else down for having their choice. There's too many of us here, and to be so separate and divided against each other. We have to come together and operate as a human family. And the only way to do that is to be more tolerant of each other in our different beliefs. That's the only way to do that. Cool, you're a Christian. Cool, you Judaism, Buddhist, atheism. Cool. We can still come together and congregate on what we believe in and how we're different, and learn from our differences.
And that's a humanist.
What was that?
A humanist. It's basically, you resonate with just humanity. Like
that's fine. If that's what that's totally fine.
Yeah, and that's what my buddy has said, because he dropped that term as well.
What term? Atheism?
Correct. Just dropped that like that. I remember he had books, and he didn't even want them out. So like wifey or kids or friends or people don't see it because, so he just adopted the term humanist. Like, no matter what your religion, no matter, like, it's almost back to the words of like Dr. King, I judge you by the contents of your character, not by,
the color of your skin and all that.
Correct.
Superficial stuff we judge each other by versus things we have in common just by being humans in general.
Religions, they judge you by the contents of your belief.
Right.
They're willing to be like, damn near segregate you just because you don't align with it. Even if you do believe in God, if you don't believe it in the way they do,
that's my whole point.
Or you don't think that the scripture says this, and it's just like, man, come on, man.
That's my whole point.
Like, you really think that? Like, you really feel like that, somebody deserved to burn or this or that or whatever. I mean, and again, we could digress on that a while, but remember that book, like I said, The Conversations with God, right? I mean, that was a touching book. I think you shared it with maybe 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah, I shared it with you 20 times before you actually read it too. It was about 20 times.
It's all right. I mean, hey, I'll share stuff with you guys. I'm sure you're not clicking, but you can relate. But listen, I mean, when I read that book, I mean, it resonated with me on so many levels. I read it and I listened to it, and it was. I feel like that if there is a God, I believe that's what it is. I feel like that if God exists, that's how he would communicate, where I think in the book it was his consciousness, basically, right? It was his consciousness really when he was sitting down communicating with God. It's basically like, I gave you the consciousness. And he was like, well, how would I know if this God? And he's like, doesn't matter. Like, are you getting the message?
Right.
Doesn't matter. What do you feel? And it was those things where it was just like, man, that resonates. And he was talking about, like, people were brought up to hell and all this stuff. And he's like, I didn't say all that. That's not how I feel.
It's human invention to get people to persuade to this certain idea.
That's not loving. And it may be a scary thing to read something like that. And because, I could tell you read Richard Dawkins' work or a few other people who, within the atheist community, who have great books who they come off harsh, but I mean the stuff in which they share, I believe, can question it. But if you want something just subtle that will just have you look at God differently, I think Conversations with God is a great start.
Fantastic.
Volume 1 through 3.
It's a 10-book series, but 1 through 3 are probably the best ones.
Yeah, I agree. So I feel like if you want something just to test the waters, read that. Play it in the background, and it's subtle enough to where even if you have believer friends around you, they'll be like, "Oh man, that's great. What is that?"
It's not about atheism. It's not about any kind of belief system. Either way, just read it and take what you can from it.
So it's like with your family, right? Like your family dynamic is like your wife. Is she religious with you, or is she down in this path? Do you feel like that, like within the home, the family dynamic? Is it easier to think this way when you have somebody who's not like, does she push, like my wife, she doesn't push it. Even though she's a believer. And there's been times where like, I was like, hey, let's pray together. Let's do this, because I know it resonates with her and it allows us to reach some goals that we have in mind. But she knows I'm not a believer. Like she knows, like she know I would sit there and just like I'll go through like maybe 20 minutes of what I always do online, and then I'll back off.
Right.
And we're cool. And it's just, it works within our dynamic. But I know friends who literally, who would kind of, how can I say this? They would basically temper themselves or shield themselves or really not be
from their actual beliefs,
correct,
to accommodate their partner.
Correct. And I mean, like, it's kind of sad because it's like, oh, I don't want to talk about that. My wife's around, or my hubby's around. Or
sometimes you have to do that to keep the peace in the household. And I think that's one of my issues with religion, like I've been saying this whole podcast. And the intolerance, the inability to appreciate differences and accept differences, because the religions don't teach that. They don't teach accept difference. They teach accept sameness and who is just like you, and they teach you, they say in Christianity, you are unequally yoked, which means your differences, they're incompatible. So you should separate from that person. And that's not okay. It breaks up households, it breaks up families, it breaks up relationships with children. It makes humanity digress instead of move forward. We can only move forward as a group, not separate. There's too many separate silos, There's thousands of religions, thousands of different denominations within those religions. Who can say who's right?
Well, and it's one of those old adages where it says, politics and religions is a thing you shouldn't discuss.
You almost should never talk about those things because they divide people so much. You automatically asking for conflict and arguments if you talk about religion or politics. It's sad, and it shouldn't be that way. And you would think we would be past that as human beings, being as intelligent as we think we are, but we still argue about petty things like politics and religion.
Well, and because it's so deeply ingrained. I mean, just like I said, with regards to religion, for somebody to tell you you're wrong, that shit hurts.
Yeah.
I'm ready to come across this table. You tell me what I've been believing for the last 35 years of my life is wrong, or my parents is wrong, their parents is wrong, and everybody is wrong, and
everybody's superior to everybody else. Yeah, this is the one true way. We got a lot of religions now that say, Black people are the supreme religious people, and we come from this place.
Oh, I hate that. The true Israelites or something like that.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a way of division. Personally,
it's more division.
Yeah, it's like,
now. So white people have been saying they're superior all these years. Now we as Black people are saying we're superior. Why not? Nobody's superior. We're here just trying to figure this thing out. Nobody's superior. It's all about faith. Nobody knows anything. That's what you believe. That's fine. This is what I believe. That's fine.
Well, I mean, but there is a beauty in coming together, though, and
community. That's my whole point.
It's a community. So I feel like when they do it, although it's sad, but there's a reason they're doing it, because if you're a good orator, you're a good speaker. I mean, like we pointed out in the past, Hitler was able to achieve just feats of just heinous crimes and atrocities because he was able to get people to buy into that.
Right.
And it's a danger that we have to make sure we mitigate in the future. So when we and again, I'm not saying that the Black Hebrew Israelites are doing anything like that, but I think there's a level of dissonance to, like you said, to say you're superior to someone else because you're your color, or that you're chosen by God, and it's just like, man, just the fucking thought process
of
like, and I've seen them on corners, man. These motherfuckers are like, they'll go out here.
They don't play.
Bro,
they are dead serious, and I appreciate their religious zeal and all that, but man, that you can't advance humanity forward that way. You just can't. There's too many of us here to think that separate.
Well, see, and to them, it doesn't matter because it's all about them. It's just a self-centeredness, and I remember Christopher Hitchens. Watch him, Christopher Hitchens, but he made a point how, like, it's all about us, like self-centeredness and just selfishness. Like, no matter all these things in which happen, it's all about us. No matter about the death and destruction throughout history of all these species that basically are no longer with us, these planets that are just destroyed, suns that are flung out into space. No matter all of that, as long as you're here, long as long as you came up here to hear me speak, whatever. It's all about that, and like when my brother sometimes he would, and I love him to death, but when he would get these modes where he'd just be like, oh, it's about this, it's about that. And I'm just like, man, ain't it so funny? You're right. Man, you're right, bro. Like, man, so glad you were born here. So glad you got this message. Right. Man, like, I don't know what you would have done if you would have been born on the other side of the hemisphere.
Right.
Like, you would have been so fucked. Mm-hmm. You would have been so fucked.
Because you wouldn't have known what you believe now.
Yeah, and I mean, and I think a lot of times too, man, like, until you travel, like, and you go to other parts of the world, like, you can say all you want, man. Talk that shit on the other side of the planet. They not gonna hear you. They don't care. And they walk off.
They think the same way about you that you think about them.
Exactly.
We have the truth, not you.
Exactly. So when when I was in Afghanistan working, we had what's called OCNs there. There was other country nationals. So these people were from all backgrounds, and the main thing they talked about with getting a job was, being tolerant to different religions and different practices. Because you would see them out, the Muslims with their certain rugs, they pray to the certain direction. You would see, when they would fast certain times, you would see like the Indians, they would post like their beliefs around and stuff like that. And I mean, it's just, there's so many different things. It's hard. I can't tell you you're wrong. And I'm not going to do that. That's not my job. If you find peace and comfort in it, cool. It's when you cross that line and you make me feel like my life is at stake if I don't believe it, or that I'm some infidel, that you should be able to take my life or other people's lives, or, you want to indoctrinate the children to the point that they can't even listen. Here's the thing. Teach your kids. That's fine. Teach them whatever you want. But teach them to listen. Teach them to question. I always present to my children, I could be wrong. Everything that I'm teaching right now, I could be wrong. I don't believe I am. But in the future, if you find a better way of living, if you find things that better resonate with you, go with that after much scrutiny. And that's how I believe we will push society forward. But if you tell them like, no, this isn't it. This is what you got to believe. This is what you got to do. They're not going to go further. They're not. They can't even hear something
a different way.
You can't even hear it. Yeah. I mean, damn, you can't even hear it. Like I mean, and we both can attest to talking to people. The moment you say something that's out of pocket when it comes to their beliefs, man, that conversation it's over. It's over. It's done. And it's the world in which we live in now. Hopefully I don't lose subscribers by having this conversation, but I just want to again put the disclaimer: this is no disrespect to any religion, what anybody believe. It was only primarily tailored to Christianity because we can speak from it by growing up as Christians. But as Christians would know, there's many other religions, and you have that same type of belief or disdain for other religions that you have not grown up with or don't believe in, that it's easy for you to just walk away from and don't even care what do you call it, whatever circumstances may happen to you by not believing in theirs, because they made some talk of hell or damnation or nothingness and all that, and you don't even bat a twat. You're like,
right,
I don't give a shit.
Right.
I just simply go one guy further. Hey man, anything you want to close with? Anything you want to?
No, I mean, I would just say thank you for having this conversation. A few years ago, there's no way we wouldn't have been able to have this conversation. At least not as nice as it has been. We could have been arguing or fighting or something like that.
Yeah, definitely.
So thank you for keep evolving, man, and critically thinking and questioning yourself. Mm-hmm. And thanks for having me on and allowing me to speak my truth. And
and this is any of my other atheist or agnostic buddies. You want to come on, talk? Don't be afraid. I don't think the dogma is as bad as it used to be. Do you still think that it's like a career suicide by talking about this?
In certain ways, yes. And it's just the way it is. And I think it'll be that way for a long time, unfortunately.
All right. We'll continue to be quiet. We'll text about it or talk offline. But, listen to it. And as I always like to say, I always add my content in an open discussion dialogue. So things can change, come back, add. If you enjoyed our conversation, hit the like button. If not, dislike, subscribe. It helps with the algorithm. Things have been actually going up and I've been paying attention to it. So thank you guys for watching. Bitch, I'm out.
That's it.